thank you so much for being here today, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to NNLM Region 2 and Region 3's 2023 Student Development Award Outreach Presentations. That's a long title. Thank you for being here. My name is Bailey Sterling. I know many of the people here. I'm also glad to see new faces that I look forward to meeting and talking with more tonight during the social. I am NNLM Region 3's Student Engagement and Marketing Strategist. The Student Development Award is a competitive award, and it's offered each year to library and information science graduate students. We really look forward to working with these students and hearing these presentations at our annual MLA chapter conferences, because they give us an opportunity not only to plug in with LIS students in our regions, but also a chance to introduce these students to all of you. So first, though, for those in the room who might not be familiar with NNLM's work, I would like to give just a quick introduction. So let's start with this basic question we see at the top here. What is NNLM? NNLM, or the Network of the National Library of Medicine, is in essence what we call the field force of the National Library of Medicine, which is under the umbrella of the National Institutes of Health. NNLM is focused on health literacy, progress in the field of medicine, and improving public health, and we do this through outreach. Our entire organization, if you'll see the map here on the bottom right of this slide, our entire organization is divided into 7 regions with a regional medical library, or RML, that serves as headquarters, so to speak, for that region. Each RML spearheads and manages outreach efforts within their particular region. Regions 2 and 3 can be seen on the map here in green and in orange. Together, Regions 2 and 3 stretch from Nebraska all the way down to Florida, and we cover the needs of populations in all the states in between. And I know that a lot of people at the conference this week also are part of Region 4, which can be seen in yellow on this map, and it kind of goes like from Arizona to North Dakota. The pictures you see on this slide are pictures of our student awardees for 2023. You'll be hearing from all of them in this hour. The Student Development Award gives students from within Regions 2 and 3 an opportunity to attend and present at least one professional conference. This year, that meant that they presented at the SEC-SC-MLA joint meeting last month in New Orleans, and that was in person. And then this year, they also have the opportunity to present to all of you here at this virtual MCMLA conference. They've worked with our staff all summer to learn about NNLM and build today's presentations. Each of the presentations you'll see covers a really useful NLM product, and I think you'll find that you'll learn something from each of them, which is wonderful. Additionally, these students have received presentation coaching, meetings with library leadership, and will be engaging in virtual professional development with our staff. Students who apply for the Student Development Award each spring must effectively demonstrate an acute interest in health sciences librarianship, and they also have to be able to communicate how attendance and presentation at MLA chapter conferences might bolster their careers. The students you will meet today have done just that. So now I'm going to hand things over to Heather Holmes, and Heather will introduce our first presenter.
Thanks, Bailey. Can you hear me okay? We good? Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for having us here from Region 2, which we're not even close to the Mid-Continental chapter, but we're appreciative to have been included and asked to be part of this presentation for your chapter, to include all the students that took part of this. This was just such a great honor for us to be part of, because our Region 2 RML is pretty new. We're only going into our 3rd year because of the restructuring of things. So we were invited to join into the Student Development Award program by Brian Leaf, the Executive Director out of Region 3. And I'm so appreciative for that, because we've had a great experience, and this is something that our region is going to continue to do going forward. That being said, let me introduce our first presenter to you. Her name is Melissa Rice. She is a student at the University of South Florida. And Melissa's had a very interesting background that this is kind of a second career for her. Previously, she was in the corporate IT type of world. But I think you'll find her presentation very interesting. She's going to speak with you about the National Library of Medicine History of Medicine database.
Thank you, Heather. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. So, Bailey, can you move it to the next slide? Thank you. I wanted to just speak a little bit more about what Heather mentioned about my background. I am anticipating graduation in May of 2024 with my MLIS at the University of South Florida, and it is a second career for me. I come into it kind of from what I would consider an information professional adjacent role. I came into my degree, started my degree having worked in healthcare, information technology, mostly with electronic health records and medical devices. And my focus was on standards and regulations. So my role within the corporation was to provide the information that the groups needed around what regulations and standards they needed to follow in their development of the solutions. And then also working with like the population health organization as well in that. And so my career goal with getting my MLIS really is to gear towards either an academic medical college setting or consumer health library. But I do have an interest in research and teaching as well. And so kind of looking for something that rounds all of that out, but I didn't want to lose my background in the healthcare technology side. And so I also am a teaching assistant now for a health informatics class and one on electronic health records fundamentals. So that's part of what I'm working on during my degree. Next slide. So I'm going to talk, as Heather mentioned, about the history of medicine from the NLM. And there are really 4 key offerings that I'm going to talk about a little bit more. And let me just tell you that this can be a rabbit hole. So if you've got some time that you want to spend exploring the history of medicine site, it's a lot of fun. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about the digital and physical collections, the exhibition program, a couple of illustrated books, and their blog, which is circulating now. And what I find fascinating about their collections is that the history of medicine has over 100 years worth of medical related history, whether it's images or files or any other thing you can really think of. They seem to have it. And there's a YouTube video that's on the main site for the history of medicine that talks about those 100 years of history. And also they have a channel within their YouTube channel. They have a whole section on history of medicine products. Next slide, please. So really where you start with the history of medicine is the search function. And again, this is the rabbit hole that I mentioned. You can search on the website through several of the different areas, like the images from the history of medicine, their digital collections, the exhibitions, and the library catalog. So there's different ways to search. So you select where you want to search, and then you enter in your keyword. So for my first search, next slide, please, I chose the NLM digital collections. And what I searched for was Tampa. So I searched for the city of Tampa, looking for, since that's where my university is, looking for something related to Tampa, and came across this health code, which is from 1923. So it was pretty much right at that 100-year mark. This is just an image of the cover of it, but they actually have the entire code in PDF format that can be downloaded. It's about, I think, about an 85 to 90 page document. So they have all sorts of things like this, where you could be looking for something in the past that may be applicable to a topic that you're teaching or information that you want to share. Next slide, please. For my second search, I did a search and went back to that search function, and this time I searched images. And this these are images I searched for New Orleans because that's where I presented this presentation in person. And I chose these two because they are very uniquely New Orleans experience. These are, in these two photos, these are mourners and musicians doing what they call jazz funeral in New Orleans. But this one is a little bit different. There, you see in the second photo that is a casket that's covered in flowers, but this is a little bit different of a funeral because this funeral in particular was for the closing of the Public Health Service Hospital in New Orleans in 1981. So they actually held a funeral for the closing of the hospital. And that hospital, the location of it is now the site of the Children's Hospital of New Orleans. So they've redone the site, they've remodeled, tore down the old building after the closure, and it's now a larger campus in that space. And it's but I found the photos to be fun representations of both the medicine side and the New Orleans side. Next slide, please. So one of the things that the History of Medicine does that I think is really great is they have exhibition programs, and there's really two facets to this. There are online exhibits and there are traveling exhibits that libraries can actually host. So what you see here was the main page of the exhibition program, and this image here is actually from one of their exhibits called World Health Organization Picturing Health for All. And in this one, a Sudanese schoolboy is learning how to administer medications. What they've cropped out of the picture is there are doctors in the background, doctors and nurses in the background who are helping train them, but this is one of those images. And then one of the things that I found today that ties into the morning session earlier is that they've added a new exhibit. So I don't have an image of this one, but they've added a new online exhibit that's called Promising Future, Complex Past, and it's artificial intelligence and the legacy of physiognomy. Make sure I can pronounce that right, or face reading, as I learned a little bit more today. So if you go to the website today and go to the NLM website and select History of Medicine, what you'll see today is that new exhibit that they've got. But I found it really interesting that it's a tie-in to artificial intelligence, giving the sessions that we had this morning. Next slide, please. So they have the traveling programs are really interesting because you can actually request these through their process. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. These are images from 3 different traveling exhibits that I kind of wanted to highlight. The one on the left is from an exhibit called The Literature of Prescription, and it's Charlotte Perkins Gilman and the Yellow Wallpaper. And this image is actually representative of the downward spiral that the main character goes through in the short story as she circles the room with her hand on this yellow wallpaper and slowly slides into hallucinations and dementia after her physician husband has prescribed rest and isolation for her condition. And it's about that spiral downward. The one in the middle is actually a representation of what's called natural magic. And this is related to Renaissance medicine. It's medicine and magic in Harry Potter's world. So there is a team, there's an exhibit and a tie-in to Harry Potter and the magic and the medicine side of things here. And then the one on the right is around, it's graphic medicine. The name of the exhibit is Graphic Medicine, Ill-Conceived and Well-Drawn. And this representation here is one of the images from that talks about what is a mood disorder. So they have a large variety of traveling exhibits. There's about 25 of them. And they are all in English, but they do have, I think it's 4 of them are also available in Spanish. Next slide, please. So the website has a place where you can actually request the form, and I will drop a link in the chat directly to this page. But you can sign up on their listserv, and that's the link at the bottom here. They have a listserv called Making Exhibition Connections. But they open it during a call for requests, and it's usually twice a year. And it turns out that the call for request window just opened this past Monday, October 17th, and is open through the end of the month. So you can actually go into request form and fill it out and request through a lottery system. You select the exhibits that you would most like to have and the date ranges that are available. They tell you which exhibits will be available for the window that this is open for. And right now they are booking some of their spots in 2024 and 2025. I spoke with my own health sciences library at the University of South Florida because they have several booked over the coming 18 months. And what I learned was that the process has gone through some changes due to COVID over time. But now it is like a lottery system. And one tip I learned is that if you have an exhibit that you really want to try and get, they had been trying to get the graphic medicine one for a while. For the slots for the exhibits that are open, they listed the graphic medicine one in all the slots available to them. So it was 2 or 3 slots. They listed graphic medicine with a different date set each time. So you can request the same one if there's one in particular and just pick different dates because of that lottery system. And that's kind of how that works. Next slide, please. And then to kind of close out, I was going to talk about the two other pieces of the offerings. The History of Medicine has created 2 illustrated books. There's a representation of one in the image on the left. This is Images of America. And their books are actually available to download in PDF format for free from the website. So they are image-heavy illustrated books around the history of medicine, and you can download those. And then the circulating now is a blog. And in September, and back in July, August, and September, they were focused on the Hinkle family and the Shenandoah and their medical practice. But actually, as of this morning, the latest blog post on there is about that Promising Future Complex Past new exhibit online that I mentioned earlier. So it's a blog about that exhibit. And so you can learn a little bit more about the AI exhibit that they have now. And one of the things that's nice about their blog, if you look at this image on the right, is that if you want to look for blogs on a particular topic or from a particular century or decade, they have links to those. So all of their blogs are well tagged, and you could actually search on one of these topics and actually get to blogs that are about that in particular. Next slide, please. So I want to thank everyone. That I do have the following groups here, which includes my coach, Heather, who just introduced me, and Bailey, who did all the introductions for the student group. But then also all of you for giving us the time and inviting us in to be able to share this information with you guys as well. I've really enjoyed participating in this conference today. So thank you guys very much. And next slide, I think it's just questions. And also my contact information, if you have further questions that I can help with, feel free to reach out to me.
I have a question, Melissa. I was a little confused about what would I find in the images versus what I would find in the digital collection? Like, are the images just photos, or in the digital collection more text-based?
It tends to be a variety. The digital collection, what I found is that you get more into things like PDF versions of that entire health code from the city of Tampa, or things along those lines, where it's a full PDF of something more text-based. And the images really are all of the different images that they have scanned in, most of which have reached a point that they're available in the public domain. But when I did my search, like for New Orleans, I pulled out the two for the funeral, but there were things like pictures of nurses' uniforms from like the 1930s, or physicians doing, or lab work being done when they were testing for diseases and things like that, doing tests on lab rats and things like that. But yes, mostly the images is really focused on the image ones, whereas the search of the collection itself gets you more into either text-based resources, some imaging, but really more to those other file and larger format items.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. Bailey, can we go on to, yes, there we go. Our second student from Region 2 is Kaitlyn Ritacca. Kaitlyn is a student at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, but she also works full-time at the University of Tennessee in Memphis, in their health sciences library. So she's kind of in the thick of it the whole way around. She's going to talk with you about my NCBI.
All right, can y'all hear me okay? Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, hi everyone. As Heather said, my name is Kaitlyn Ritacca, and I'm going to be talking to you all about my NCBI. And I am very excited to be here, and I know I have a limited amount of time, so I'm just gonna dive right in. Next slide, please. But before we dive into today's agenda and kind of the rest of the presentation, I thought I'd share a little bit more about myself and kind of who I am and what I do. So for my educational background, I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in English from the University of Minnesota, which I earned in 2019. And I'm currently enrolled in the Master of Science in Information Sciences program at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, with an anticipated graduation date of spring 2024, which is so very close, and I am very excited to be in my final semesters. In my current role, I work at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center Library in Memphis as the Senior Reference Services Specialist, in which is a very fancy way of saying that I do a little bit of everything depending on the day, including staffing the reference desk and helping any students or faculty that kind of come in physically to the library, or compiling department statistics, facilitating student engagement events, among other kind of ad hoc duties as needed. And then my career interests lie in, of course, health sciences librarianship, but specifically user services and assessment. Next, please. Thank you. And now that you know a little bit more about me, we can move on to the agenda for today. So we're going to start with a touch of background about NCBI as an organization, although I dare say many of you are familiar with them already, and then move on to an overview of the My NCBI platform and some of the ways that can kind of be optimized and utilized in a real world setting, and then wrap up with any questions from you all. And my hope is that by the end of this presentation, you'll have kind of a general understanding of the platform and how it could potentially be used, but I'm not going to go like too in depth. This is going to be a bit more of kind of an overview. Otherwise, I'll be up here for an hour and we just don't have that kind of time. Next, please. And so, as I said, we're going to start with a little bit of background. And as you're all probably familiar with, the National Center for Biotechnology Information, or NCBI, houses a large suite of online biomedical and bioinformatics resources, including databases, tools, and services. Next, please. And this is the NCBI homepage, where you can see kind of the wealth of resources available through the site. And you can access all of the resources, including a very familiar resource, PubMed, on this site. And all of them are kind of congregated in the upper right-hand corner. There is a little graphic. Yes, thank you, Bailey. And the real power of NCBI's resources is found in their relationship to one another, as most are linked together in some capacity, which kind of creates a comprehensive suite of resources for researchers. Next, please. And one of the ways to further maximize the resources available on NCBI is through My NCBI, which is a free, and I just want to say again, a free account, which retains user information and database preferences to provide customized services for PubMed and other NCBI databases. Here's the login page for my NCBI, and one of the things that has been updated in the past few years is the login process. So instead of using NCBI credentials only, like your username and password, users need to log in through any of the third-party logins that you can see here, or through their institution by clicking the More Logins option at the bottom. I think there's a graphic for that. Yes, thank you, Bailey. Next, please. And then once you are logged in, this is the default My NCBI homepage, and it can be a little overwhelming at first, but each of the features is organized into distinct boxes, which can be further arranged and modified according to personal preference by clicking the Customize This page and NCBI's preferences in the top right corner. And then this is to point out that, again, My NCBI is a truly customizable platform that can be modified based on a researcher's needs and interests. Next, please. And because there's a lot of resources available, through My NCBI, I broke them down into roughly 3 categories. Next, please. Which is search optimization, citation management, and professional profiles. And this breakdown helped me to better understand and kind of map out the potential uses of the platform, and then, of course, guide this presentation. Next, please. And so starting with the search optimization features, there are 4 main components that allow users to maximize their search strategy. And the first is the saved searches, which allows users to save search queries for NCBI databases and provides automatic email updates for saved searches, which can be set up on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. And then one aspect of this feature that I really like, if you look in the screenshot on the right-hand side, there is a test kind of your saved search beforehand. So you aren't wasting time like saving searches that aren't really actually helpful for you. I thought that was a feature that was pretty handy. Next, please. And the collections feature kind of builds on and expands on the saved searches feature, but instead of saving search queries, you can compile the results from a search into a collection of your choosing. So through the collections feature, you can save records from different searches into one collection, create multiple collections based on your interests, and then share these collections with others, such as a research team, faculty members, students, etc. Next, please. Filters, of course, we're all familiar with, and then these can be used to narrow down results into smaller groups of data. So you can add additional filters specific to your areas of interest, browse the library of filters available on the My NCBI platform, or create custom filters, and then use filters to easily identify citations with full text available through your institution. And when you're signed into your My NCBI account and you're searching in PubMed, for instance, these additional filters appear kind of towards the top of the database above like the normal filters that are there, so you can easily turn them on and off for every search that you do. Next, please. All right, the final search optimization feature is recent activity, which, as the name implies, provides users a history of their searches and records in NCBI databases. And when you aren't signed into your account, the website will automatically save your recent activity and searches for about 8 hours. But when you are signed in, that time jumps to 6 months, which is really helpful for those of us, who are working on kind of longer term projects and might want to reference back to searches that were done at a different time. And all the searches and records in recent activity are hyperlinked, you can see on the right-hand side there, so that users can easily view their searches again. Next, please. And one of the other main features in My NCBI involves citation management, which conveniently is called My Bibliography. And this is a reference tool that helps users save their citations from PubMed, or if not found there, to manually upload a citations file or to enter citation information using the My Bibliography templates. And it provides a centralized place for your publications where citations are easily accessed, exported as a file, and made public to share with others. Next, please. Thank you. So through My Bibliography, users can set up and manage their bibliography, create a second bibliography of other citations, and then use the bibliography for grant reporting. Next, please. So why is this important? Well, other than managing your own citations, My Bibliography allows users to see whether their publications comply with the NIH Public Access Policy, which requires authors who receive NIH funding to make their manuscripts freely available in PubMed Central within a year of publication. So my bibliography allows users to check their compliance with this policy, to start the compliance process for their publications, and to associate their publications with awards. And that's all I wanted to point out here. I'm not an expert on the NIH public access policy or any compliance with it, but my bibliography is a great tool that can help researchers with that kind of compliance of their publications. Next, please. And finally, the kind of last main feature of my NCBI involves the creation and management of professional profiles through ScienceCV. So ScienceCV, or Science Experts Network Curriculum Vitae, it's a mouthful, excuse me, is a feature in my NCBI that creates biosketches. And biosketches are documents an individual's qualifications and experience for a specific role in a project, and is basically a streamlined version of your CV. So ScienceCV gathers and compiles information about a user's education, employment history, research activities, publications, and other professional contributions all in one place, and allows researchers to describe and highlight their scientific contributions in their own words. Next, please. And again, why is this important? Well, because the NIH, and this month actually, the NSF, requires submission of a biosketch for each proposed senior and/or key personnel and other significant contributor on a grant application. When making your biosketch through my NCBI, users can easily select which funding party they are associating their profile with to kind of further streamline that process and make it a little bit easier. So if you look in that screenshot, you can see which funding party. There's a couple different options that you can select as you kind of build your CV. Next, please. All right, so many features in my NCBI are best used when a user's account is linked to other accounts such as ERA Commons or ORCID. And you don't necessarily have to link them to use the search optimization features, but it is beneficial to link them for the features like my bibliography and ScienceCV. And if you already have these other platforms kind of set up, it only takes a few clicks in the account setting on my NCBI to link them all together. And there are other accounts, which you can also link, but these are kind of the two main ones that I wanted to point out. By linking these accounts specifically, users can, again, track their publications and ensure they are in compliance with the NIH public access policy, organize and prepare your publications and biosketches for the grant application process, and overall kind of better manage your research in general. Next, please. So overall, my NCBI is a platform with a wealth of resources that supports users throughout every stage of the research process, whether that is searching for and organizing your articles, managing already published research and checking its compliance, or creating professional profile for federally funded projects. It's kind of a nice one-stop shop. Next, please. And given all the resources available, I know I talked about a lot of information in a very short amount of time. I have a few key takeaways, and one of which is to explore the platform or log back in if you haven't been on in a little while, and encourage other people to explore it as well, especially early career folks. And then finally, stay up to date about any changes happening on the platform, as this could have any changes could affect all sorts of publication and research requirements in the future, and they're always making announcements on kind of changes that are happening. Next, please. Oh, those are my references. There's a few of them. I just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of these lovely folks. Specifically NNLM Region 2 for this opportunity. It's been such a wonderful process, and I've really enjoyed working with you all. I don't think any of my colleagues at UTHSC are here, but they were also great in giving me a little bit of feedback for this presentation, which I appreciated. And of course, my coach for the Student Development Award, Heather Holmes, who has just been an invaluable resource throughout this entire process, and also MCMLA for having us here. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Thank you all.
I actually did have a question, Kaitlyn.
Yeah, please.
One of the filters you discussed was to help researchers find the full text of articles in journals their institution own. Now, that's something that the library has to turn on, or does the researcher have to request something?
That is a great question. From how it's set up on my profile, like when I log in, how I log in is through UTK. And so automatically, I think those filters are the ones that or the full text that are available automatically populate because I have that linked account already, if that makes sense. So I think it is more so what accounts you're linked through
Okay.
on your profile. I could be incorrect though, and I'm happy to look into that.
That's okay. I also, that piece that you discussed about how the NCBI's functions can match and connect to ARC ID and others, I think is really important, because I can't tell you how many times I've had researchers say, I have to put it all in again.
Yeah.
When there's the institution could create a faculty database that might not necessarily hit all the other ones. So I thought that was a great piece that you reminded everyone about.
Oh, thank you.
I was just wondering, is there a login preference that people use or that seem to be work the best? Do you know?
I don't know. I think it really depends on kind of an individual basis, which is a non-answer, so I apologize.
Okay.
But I think it kind of depends, since you can log in through like your ORCID ID or ERA Commons or your institutional access. For me, it was just the easiest way to sign up through my institutional access. So, and I could kind of get all the features I needed through that way. But again, happy to look into that and see if there's anything out there that kind of tells us what people typically log in through, or if anyone has any insight.
Thank you for everyone's wonderful questions. And thank you, Kaitlyn and Melissa. I'm going to go ahead and move on, but if you have more questions, please type them into the chat. I'm sure our students would be happy to respond.
So I get to introduce my student, Annisija Hunter. I had the pleasure of coaching her over the summer and into fall. So Annisija first worked in library during her undergrad as a music major. She grew interested in medical information and medical librarianship after researching health programming at her local library. So while passionate about community outreach, she's also very interested in learning more about clinical librarianship. And she plans to graduate with her MLIS from University of Missouri in spring of 2024. And she'll be doing a presentation on MedPix today. So introducing Annisija.
Can everyone hear me okay? All right, thank you. I first want to thank Katie. She's been my mentor for the last semester or so, and she's listened to me give this presentation many times, and she's given me lots of hints and feedback, and I'm really grateful for that. I'm also thankful to NNLM Region 3 and for you all at MCMLA for hosting us. Thanks for listening to all of our fun research. I am excited today to tell you a little bit about what I've learned about the database MedPix. Next slide. But first, a little bit about me. My name is Annisija. It's kind of tricky to say. I got my bachelor's degree from BYU in music. I love music. I still play my viola, and I sing in a community choir, and I play the organ for my local church congregation. So music is still a big part of my life. But I went back to school to get my MLIS because I love the outreach that libraries do. And I also live right next to the Mayo Clinic. And after I started my degree, I discovered that the clinic has like 15 libraries or more maybe. And so I took a medical librarianship class, and I took a digital libraries class, and I learned a lot about big data and how it's affecting the library landscapes. And so while I'm still interested in outreach, I also am really interested right now in data analysis and how big data is kind of affecting the health librarianship scene. I'm also a mom. I have a husband and 3 kids and a cat whose name is Butter. And when I'm not chasing them all around, I love to garden and do all kinds of puzzles, and I'm a big chocolate person too. Next slide. This is a picture of my little brother. His name is Isaac, He is kind of the oddball in my family. All of us siblings, we were musical and creative, but while we were all practicing the piano, Isaac was doing different things. He liked to play virtual surgery on the computer. And now he is 21 and doing his degree in pre-med, and he wants to be a cardiothoracic surgeon when he grows up. So when I told him about MedPix, he got really excited, and I'm going to show you a little bit why. Next slide. So first we're going to talk about what MedPix is, and then what it looks like, how we search it, and how we as information professionals might use it. So at its simplest, MedPix is an image database. It contains over 59,000 medical images and scans, and all of these images are organized into cases. So all of the images for a single case are all grouped together. And many of these images contain arrows and explanations and descriptions that show how the image is used to reach diagnostic conclusions. And many of the cases also include quizzes. So as such, they're a really great resource for students who maybe aren't used to looking at these kinds of images, and they can test their knowledge. But as an added bonus, these quizzes can be taken by healthcare professionals to earn free CME credit. Next slide. This is what the landing page looks like. If you notice on the top right, you'll see the login button. You don't have to log in to use any of the resources, to take the quizzes, or look at any of the cases. But if you do want free CME credit, then you do need to log in. And then at the top, you'll see the main search bar. And then on the left-hand side is the case of the week. So if you are a curious person or just like some serendipity in your life, you can explore that. They update it regularly. Next slide. This is what a case page looks like. So along the top, you can see all of the images for this case. And then on the left-hand side is the featured image with the description below. And then on the right-hand side is the patient information. So the patient's history, their diagnosis, any treatment. And then on the right-hand side, you can also see a couple more tabs called topic and author. And under the topic tab is a description of the topic that the case falls under, along with references for that topic, and also links to any other cases that also apply to that topic. And then under author, you can find the original contributor of the case. So the person or the institution who uploaded the case will be under author. And then in the middle, you can toggle the quiz button to on, and then next slide. If you do that, then you'll get a quiz page that looks like this. You can see how some of the information has been blurred out, so users can test their knowledge. And then under each question, there are references with links. So if a user gets stuck, they can click on the links and find the information that will help them to answer that question. And so every quiz that's completed is worth 30 minutes of CME Category 1 CME credit. That is completely free, which is great. Next slide. So how do we search it? You can always use the main search bar if you kind of know what you're looking for and do a keyword search for like a diagnosis or an organ system or something, or you can use more advanced searching. This image is an example of what the advanced searching kind of looks like. You can put specific information in there like the plane or modality of an image, or for a patient, like a patient's age or sex. Or you can, also they have this cool human body image, and if you hover your mouse over it, different organ systems will light up in different colors, and it's very pretty. And you can click on the organ systems and search that way. There's also robust browsing options. So if we go to the next slide. You can browse by diagnosis by going to the Cases tab. And then you'll get this big long list of all of the diagnoses in alphabetical order. So this is kind of an unwieldy way to search, but if you are like me and you might know what diagnosis you're looking for, but you're really bad at spelling medical jargon, then this might be a good way to search. Next slide. You can also browse by topic by going to the Topics tab. All of the cases are indexed by the old American College of Radiology system, or ACR. But everything is also cross-indexed by location of disease and category of disease. So you can choose whichever way you're most comfortable searching, and then click a topic on the left-hand side, and then you can browse the thumbnails until you find something of interest. Next slide. So my little brother loves this because he can just type into that main search bar double aortic arch, and immediately he has 99 images to search through that all have descriptions and there are references and treatments, which for a pre-med student is pretty cool. But we are not pre-med students, we are information professionals. So how do we use this resource? Or how do we connect this resource to the people who can use it the best? So next slide. First, we can use the pictures. So if you're giving a presentation or you're teaching a class or anything like that, then you can use these images to help connect to your audience. They're really kind of pretty and they grab an audience's attention. Or you can promote these images to the healthcare professionals that you work with and make sure that they know that they can also use these images. And then also we can promote using this site for free CME credit for any of the healthcare professionals that we know. Also, this is a great resource for students. So if you work with students of any kind, then you can promote this as a way for them to practice identifying image types, looking for abnormalities within images, practicing making diagnoses from an image. Those quizzes are really a really great way for them to practice. And finally, I do want to mention that none of these images are under the Creative Commons. So if you do want to use these images for something other than educational or personal use, then you need to contact the original contributor. And remember, you can do that by going to the author tab and finding the contributors there. Next slide. So finally, MedPix is always looking for new cases. So we, as medical professionals, can help to promote case contribution by the people that we know who might have a case to contribute. And you can do that by clicking on this button. It looks just like this. It says contribute a case, and it's on the main landing page. And if you click it, it takes you to a page that will tell you exactly how to upload a case and images. And I think that it's really important as information professionals that we are promoting open access resources like this. The more that knowledge like this is accessible, I think it will really help to make even more knowledge accessible, which I think is something that we as information professionals can really, it's a goal we can all get behind. Next slide. That's all I have for you. So if there's any questions, or you can contact me personally, I'd love to answer. Oh, Peggy had a question. How does MedPix keep up to date? Some conditions have different treatments as the years have gone on. Ooh, I think that this is true. I actually don't know how they weed old cases, but I'm happy to look into that for you. But I do know that they are always looking for more contributions as well. Any other questions?
Thank you so much, Annisija. Just in the interest of time, if there are additional questions, please type them in the chat. Annisija, feel free to answer them there. And we're going to move on to the final presentation.
Okay, great. So it's my pleasure to introduce our next student. But before I do so, I just want to thank Bailey for her stewardship of our program, and to NNLM Region 2 and Heather Holmes for joining us and collaborating on this journey with us since January. This program has come a long way over the last 7 years. And as I mentioned a little earlier, it's not only an opportunity to help develop student presentation skills, but to shepherd them into the profession by getting them involved with their local MLA chapter and their future health science library colleagues. When we think about shaping what this program looks like, it's of utmost importance to us that we're able to not only create a great learning environment and experience, but to also provide all of you with resources, information, and insights that hopefully helps enhance all of your work. So thank you again to everyone here in MCMLA for welcoming our wonderful students. And now I will introduce our final presenter. So Sarah Villere is a first-year MLS student at Emporia State University. Currently, Sarah works as a library associate at the Englewood Public Library in Denver, Colorado, where she also resides with her husband and 3-year-old son. but Sarah comes to us with an impressive background already. She has her Bachelor of Science in Psychology with a neuroscience concentration, as well as a global health certificate from Duke University. Sarah went on to a Master of Science in Nursing with a specialty in adult gerontology primary care, and also has a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Northeastern University. So Sarah has had a decade-long career as a nurse practitioner, mainly spent with the NYC Department of Health and Mental Hygiene and the Bureau of Sexually Transmitted Infections. During the networking social, I encourage you to ask her more about her time there, as well as the telemedicine project she worked on, or whatever else piques your interest. Her hope is to match her nursing background with information science to better serve patients and their families. Today, she is presenting on NLM's Common Data Elements Repository, and she's been absolutely fantastic to work with. Please give her a virtual hand.
Hi, thank you, Brian. So my name's Sarah Villere, and I am presenting on the NIH Common Data Elements Repository. Next slide. Brian's already mentioned my educational and professional background, but I did want to tell you some more fun facts about me. I live in Denver, so my favorite Colorado landmark has to be Rocky Mountain National Park, and especially my family's annual stay at the YMCA of the Rockies. So for my Colorado people out there, if you've never been, I would definitely recommend going. And while I do love Colorado, if I could choose to live anywhere in the world, it would have to be Scotland. I studied abroad in Glasgow, and I spent my free time traveling the country and really just fell in love with the magical landscapes there. Next slide, please. I do want to give some quick thank yous. So the Mid-Continental Chapter of the MLA for hosting us, to the NNLM Region 3, and especially Bailey Sterling and Brian Leaf, who was my coach throughout this process. And finally, Dr. Vardell, my professor at Emporia State, who encouraged me to apply for this opportunity. Next slide. By the end of this presentation, I really want you to understand what this repository is, why it's relevant for you, and how it could be used. So I'll provide an overview of the database, I'll discuss why it's important, I'll review some key definitions and special features of the database, I'll cover the layout and guide you through a brief sample search, and then I'll provide resources if you are interested in learning more. Next slide. So to begin, I'd first like to take a quick poll. I realize that some of you may be viewing this presentation as a group. Shout out to everybody at Strauss Library who I've been watching with. But in general, I'm curious, how many times have you attended this conference? So if you don't mind entering in the chat, are there any of you out there where this is your first time? So I would fall into that group. Anybody else? First time? Okay. And how many of you have been here anywhere from 2 to 10 times? Probably most of you. Has anyone been here 10 or more times? Wow, okay. Nice, thank you for sharing. Next slide. Now, imagine that the NNLM wanted to collect that data from each presentation, and they asked each presenter to take a similar poll. So the next poll, poll B, may have asked a slightly different question with slightly different answers. And then another poll, poll C, may ask the audience to just type in their answers without any other guidelines. How could the NNLM compare the data gathered from those polls? It would be difficult, time-consuming, and costly. Next slide. So what if instead the presenters were given a standardized poll with a set question and defined responses? So how many times have you attended this conference? Maybe the set question, and then the possible responses may be 1 to 2, 3 to 4, or 5 plus. And that would make it much easier to ensure consistent data collection. So that's exactly what Common Data Elements do for clinical research. Next slide. So the Common Data Elements Repository was created by the NIH in 2015, and it provides free public access to search and use common data elements. So it's a tool to improve the accuracy, consistency, and interoperability among data sets. And the repository can be accessed through the web address listed here. Next slide. Why is this important for research? Well, first, using CDEs enables easier data sharing, and it adheres to the FAIR data principles to make sure that data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. It also may be required for researchers. So as many of you may know, and we're maybe even preparing for already, there are new federal data management and sharing policies, including those from the NIH, which went into effect in January of this year. So researchers funded by the NIH will be highly encouraged or even required to use CDEs. But aside from the fact that it supports an ideal, it may be required, why would researchers want to use CDEs? Ultimately, it's because it improves the quality of their data and it saves them time and resources. Why should they reinvent the wheel when it's already available to them for free through this database? Next slide. And as librarians, we have an opportunity to be an integral part of the research team and help navigate this process. So these are some of the things that we're already doing or that we're equipped to do. We can use our skills in data management and sharing to support researchers. We can be available to provide training and support on using the database itself. We can also continue to promote fair data principles at our institutions. Next slide. I do want to quickly go over some key definitions to help you understand the language of the site a little bit. So first, common data elements, or CDEs, are standardized, defined questions with specific allowable responses. So similar to the polling example that I gave at the beginning, an example of a CDE or a standardized question used in clinical research may be height measurement, and the acceptable response would be a numerical value in centimeters. Forms are a set of CDEs that have been bundled together and are indivisible. So what I mean by that is that some of the CDEs must be packaged together and they become invalidated if you don't use them as a package. So one example of this would be the PHQ-9 Quick Depression Assessment Panel. So that includes separate CDEs that have to be used together as that form or panel. And then finally, NIH endorsed CDEs are CDEs that have been reviewed and approved to meet established criteria as determined by the NIH CDE Governance Committee. So those are designated with a gold ribbon like the icon that you see here. Next slide. So in order to better understand how to use the database, I wanted to present a scenario. Let's say that I'm a health sciences librarian and a researcher just came to me asking for help. They're studying the relationship between COVID-19 and pregnancy complications, and they want to use CDEs as part of their study, but they're not sure how to start. They've never used the database before. So let's take a look and we can see how we may be able to help them. Next slide. Because I only have 10 minutes, I don't have time to take you through every piece of the website, but I do want to highlight some of the important features on the homepage. And the first is that you can browse or keyword search CDEs, forms, or NIH endorsed CDEs directly from the homepage. So to browse, you would select from the top right-hand side of the top banner, either the CDEs or forms tabs, and those would take you to browse CDEs or forms. For keyword searching, you would use the search bar in the middle of the screen here. And so you can see that it defaults to NIH endorsed CDEs, but you can choose instead to search all CDEs or all forms. And you would type in a topic, a keyword, or an organization. And you can use Boolean operators in the keyword search function. And then also, while you can browse, you can search, you can export without signing in. If you do choose to register for a free account, then you do get access to expanded features. So for example, you can actually save CDEs for later on what's called a board. And so that could be accessed through the My Boards tab in the top right banner. And those can be private or public boards. So getting back to our researcher, we have a couple options. First, we could browse CDEs to see what's available. So to do this, I would select CDEs from the top banner on the homepage. Next slide. And now I can browse through over 23,000 CDEs that are available. So you could choose to refine your results using filters on the left-hand side of the screen there. Since our researcher is interested in COVID-19, we may want to start with the Project 5 collection. You see that it has the gold ribbon icon, meaning it is endorsed. Another option would be to use a keyword search. So either we could go back to the homepage, which would easily be done by clicking the logo in the top left corner of the screen, or we can also use the search bar at the top of the browsing page there. So let's say that the researcher would first like to establish if the participant is pregnant. Next slide, please. So by using the keyword search pregnancy, I can see 234 results. And again, I could filter or refine my results on the left-hand side of the screen. Remember that I can use Boolean operators here. So if I were to search instead for pregnancy and COVID, next slide, it takes me down to just 2 results. Both are part of Project 5. Both are endorsed by the NIH. So these may be good options. From the search page, we can see the title of the CDE, which is in that bold blue. There's a description of the CDE for the researcher, which is the text right below it. We can also pin it directly to our board by clicking that pin icon on the right side of the CDE title. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at one of the CDEs and see what they actually look like. For example, I selected current pregnancy indicator. So the very first thing that you notice is a warning that this is part of a bundle or a form. So like we talked about earlier, this CDE is part of a package with other CDEs, and it can't be used on its own. I also see a pin icon where I could pin this to my board. I could export it right now by clicking the export tab and actually use this CDE. I see the question text, which is, are you pregnant now? Next slide. Scrolling down a little bit further, I can see the permissible values. These are the allowable answers. So in this case, the possible answers are yes, no, and unknown. Next slide. And then scrolling even further down, I can see if the CDE is included on any forms, which in this case it is, on the Project 5 current pregnancy form. So I could click this link to go directly to that form. And if this isn't quite what I was looking for, I can also search for similar CDEs under the more like this tab that you see there. Next slide. So this was an extremely quick overview, but I do hope that it's given you a little better understanding of what CDEs are, why they're important, and how they can be accessed through the repository. I do encourage you to explore the site a little bit on your own if you're interested in learning more. There's many step-by-step guides and resources available directly through the database. My favorite was a free webinar that was created by the NLM that I would highly encourage you to take if you're interested. So I've included a QR code here. It goes into much more depth about the database and searching strategies. And I also want to highlight there's an upcoming NNLM webinar. Oh, it was yesterday. There's a recently passed NNLM webinar that was called Standardize Your Research Data with the NIH Common Data Element Repository. And it was yesterday, but I will include a link. They do record these so that you can watch them. And it's about an hour-and-a-half long runtime. So next slide. Here are my references. Next slide. And to end, I've included a picture of me living my best life on a hike in my future home in Scotland. And I've also included my contact information, so please reach out at any time. And any questions for me? I see one about the export formats. And yes, I'm actually, I have the repository pulled up right now. And so I'm going to go, there's a couple different format options, and I want to make sure that I get that right. So I see a schema JSON file and a schema XML file are the export options that I'm seeing here right now. So I haven't exported through those. I'm not, you know, it's alphabet soup a little bit to me, but I hope that that is helpful and answers your questions. Are there any other questions for me?
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thanks for everyone in the chat for all the talk and all the questions that you have. Please feel free to continue asking questions now or contact us directly if you have any questions moving forward. I do want to pause. I know we're not in person, but I want to take a moment for some great comments to roll in for a virtual round of applause for these wonderful students. They really were outstanding. They did a great job. I learned something from each one of them, which is such a pleasure. So they really did a wonderful job. So thank you, students, for all your work over the last several months. Before we get out of here, I just want to thank a couple of people for their work on this project. Heather Holmes, Katie Pierce Farrier and Brian Leaf all served as coaches for our students. I owe them 1,000 million thanks for the work that they've done. It's really not possible without them. And of course, it's not possible without you either. Thank you to everyone here who is part of MCMLA or as a guest of MCMLA. We're incredibly grateful to you for this forum. I also want to thank Sean for letting us eat into her time. Thank you so much, Sean. We appreciate your gracious, willingness to let us eat into your time a little bit. So like I said, if you want any more information about these students, about their programs, or about any other student programming that we may offer, please reach out to me or any other NNLM representatives, and we would love to chat. So thank you all for being here. Have a great evening.
Thanks for watching. This video was produced by the network of the National Library of Medicine. Select the circular channel icon to subscribe to our channel, or select a video thumbnail to watch another video from the channel.